Pfeifers of Arkansas. And some of this I'm sure you all already know, but by the way, I am the great-great-grandson of Joseph Pfeifer. I am the great-grandson of Leo Pfeifer, who I'll mention in a minute, and who I was named for. But anyway, in 1853, Joseph Pfeifer landed in the United States with $5 in his pocket. He was from the Dukedom of Baden, which is Germany now. In 1865, he made his way to Little Rock by way of Louisville. And when he arrived in Little Rock, population was about 15,000 people. During that year, he opened his first store, which was between 2nd and 3rd on Main, which is back down that way. In 1902, he relocated to 4th and Main, which is also behind you. By 1912, the store was being run by his oldest son, Leo Pfeifer. In those days, the oldest son had a big advantage, and he got to do things. But at that same time, two of his brothers, Albert and Preston Pfeifer, had opened a jewelry store that was very successful, and they merged it in, and that's when it became Pfeifer Brothers. And Preston remained with the store. Albert moved on, and Leo Pfeifer served as president until 1920, when he was succeeded by Harry Pfeifer, who was succeeded by Preston Pfeifer, who served as president until 1935, when Sam Strauss, who was Leo Pfeiffer's son-in-law, became president. 1947, the Pfeifer brothers, if you'll notice, that's diagonally over there. It was a very innovative idea. They opened a home center, appliances, bedding, TV, well, not TVs in 47, but radios, and things along those lines, and it was very innovative and unheard of at that time. They also had a bargain basement where things were sold at a big discount. Pfeifer brothers and Pfeifers of Arkansas were always big believers in taking their markdowns, and the reason being that they believed that if they could send all the product back that they didn't sell and get their money back at the end of the season, they would have done it. So consequently, they did what they could to get rid of product at the end of the season. In 1948, they expanded into Hot Springs, and that's when it became Pfeifers of Arkansas. In 1959, they went through their last expansion, and when Pfeifers of Arkansas, their last expansion took them up to 140,000 square feet, which was a pretty big amount of time during that in those days. In 1963, the store was sold to William Dillard. At that time, there were 400 employees of Pfeifers of Arkansas. When I read Mr. Dillard's biography, he did say, I mean, that was the first time I had ever seen a price on what the store was sold for. It was sold, according to his biography, for $3 million. They didn't designate what was cash and what was the assumption of debt. And that was the end of Pfeifers of Arkansas. Jimmy had asked me to come up with some sort of gossip stuff. Not so good at gossip, sorry. I can tell you a few things that are fairly interesting about the store. The men's department never did compete on the upper end. The M.M. Tone store, which was right next door, had Hart, Schaffner, and Marks, and that dominated men's fashion as far as suits were concerned. On the ladies' ready-to-wear, they were very competitive here. Pfeifers actually made a small investment with a designer in New York named Teal Trana, who is of no great, I guess, people would not have heard his name. However, Teal Traina did discover Jeffrey Bean and did give him his start. So we can say Pfeifers of Arkansas started Jeffrey Bean if we want to, but it might be a stretch. The greatest, the hottest selling item in the history of Pfeifers of Arkansas was when Walt Disney came out with the story of Davy Crockett. Bess Parker started, and when they sold coonskin caps, it was the hottest selling item in the history of the store. Later on, but by that time, the Dillards had taken over, but my father was still employed there. The only thing to ever surpass it was when the Beatles came out in '64, and over at the home center, they sold records, and that was a hotter selling item than the coonskin cap. The men's department, the best selling item they ever had in the men's, and as I said before, it was not as upscale as some of the other department store on the men's side, but they sold a suit with a pair of pants so that the suit coat could be used as a sport coat. And that was the best-selling item that they had there. If you have any questions, I'll try and answer, but I don't know that I